It was March 23, 1996, at Madison Square Garden, during Tupac's All Eyes on Me tour. Tupac was at the absolute peak of his artistic and commercial power, having just released what many considered his masterpiece double album. The tour was selling out arenas across the country, and this New York show was being filmed for a potential live concert special that would showcase Tupac's dominance of both coasts. But beneath the surface of his professional success, Tupac was dealing with personal betrayals that were eating him alive from the inside. Friends he had trusted were distancing themselves from him as his legal troubles mounted. People he had supported were choosing safer associations as his reputation became more controversial. And most painfully, Jada Pinkett, his oldest friend, his first love, the person who had known him before he became Tupac Shakur, was now a rising Hollywood star who seemed to be actively avoiding any public connection to him. Jada had become one of the most promising young actresses in Hollywood, with her breakthrough role in Menace the Centis Society, and her starring role in the hit TV series A Different World. Her career was on a meteoric rise, and her management team had made it clear that association with Tupac's increasingly controversial image could damage her mainstream appeal. The distance between them had been growing for months, but it had come to a head just weeks before the Madison Square Garden show, when Jada had publicly stated in an interview that she was focusing on positive relationships and surrounding herself with people who supported her growth. Everyone in their circle understood this as a direct rejection of her friendship with Tupac. What made it even more painful was that Tupac knew Jada's success in Hollywood had come partly because of connections and opportunities that his own fame had helped create. He had introduced her to industry people, had promoted her career in interviews, had been one of her biggest supporters when she was just another struggling actress from Baltimore. Now that she had achieved the success they had both dreamed of, she was cutting him out of her life to protect her image. The betrayal was devastating not just personally, but because it represented everything Tupac hated about how success changed people. Jada had gone from being someone who understood his struggles and supported his authenticity to someone who saw him as a liability to be managed and minimized. The confrontation that would destroy their friendship forever began when Jada unexpectedly appeared backstage at Madison Square Garden just before Tupac's final set. She claimed she wanted to clear the air and end things on a positive note, but Tupac immediately understood that she was there to deliver a final public rejection that would protect her career while making him look like the unreasonable one. "Pac," she said, using the nickname she had called him since they were teenagers in Baltimore. "I think we need to talk." "Talk about what?" Tupac responded, his voice already carrying the edge that people who knew him had learned to fear. "About how you've been avoiding me for months. About how you've been telling reporters that you're done with negative influences." "That's not what I said," Jada replied. But her defensive tone made it clear that it was exactly what she had meant. "Then what did you say?" Tupac shot back. "Because what I heard was my oldest friend telling the world that I'm not good enough for her new Hollywood life." Their conversation was taking place in the backstage area, where dozens of crew members, other artists, and industry people could hear every word. Jada had clearly chosen this public setting deliberately, knowing that Tupac would be less likely to lose his temper with witnesses present. But she had miscalculated how angry and hurt he really was. "I'm trying to build a career," Jada said, her voice taking on the kind of professional tone that Tupac associated with everything he hated about the entertainment industry. "I can't be associated with all the drama and legal problems. My agents have made it clear that certain relationships could hurt my opportunities." "Certain relationships?" Tupac repeated, and everyone backstage could hear the dangerous quiet in his voice. "So that's what 20 years of friendship is to you now? A certain relationship?" "That's not fair," Jada responded. "You know how much our friendship means to me, but I have to think about my future." "Your future?" Tupac said, and his voice was now carrying the kind of fury that made security guards start paying attention. "What about the future we used to talk about? What about the promises we made to stay real no matter what happened? What about loyalty?" The argument was attracting more and more attention as their voices rose, and someone suggested they move the conversation to a private area. But Tupac was beyond caring about privacy or professionalism. "Nah," he said, loudly enough for everyone backstage to hear. "If Jada wants to disrespect 20 years of friendship for her Hollywood career, then everyone should hear how she really feels about where she came from." That's when Jada made the mistake that would turn their private heartbreak into public warfare. Instead of backing down or trying to defuse the situation, she decided to match his aggression with her own. Maybe she was tired of feeling guilty about her career choices. Maybe she was frustrated with Tupac's refusal to understand the pressures she was facing. Or maybe she just wanted to hurt him the way he was hurting her. "You know what, Tupac?" she said, her voice now carrying its own edge. "Maybe it's time someone told you the truth about why people are distancing themselves from you." "What truth?" Tupac asked. But his expression showed he already knew this was going to be devastating. "The truth is that your behavior has become impossible to defend," Jada continued, apparently committed to burning down their entire relationship. "The truth is that you've become so paranoid and aggressive that people are scared to be around you. The truth is that you've changed from someone I loved and respected into someone I barely recognize." The words hit Tupac like physical blows, but Jada wasn't finished. "You want to talk about loyalty?" she continued. "What about loyalty to yourself? What about the person you used to be before fame and money and all this gangster nonsense turned you into someone who sees enemies everywhere?" The backstage area had gone completely silent. Everyone understood they were witnessing the complete destruction of what had once been one of hip-hop's most important friendships. But instead of ending the confrontation there, Tupac made a decision that would change everything. He decided to take their private pain public. "You know what?" he said, walking toward the stage entrance. "If you want to tell me how you really feel about who I've become, then let's do it where everyone can hear. Let's do it where 30,000 people can judge which one of us is really keeping it real." "Pac, don't," Jada said, finally realizing how completely the situation had spiraled out of control. But Tupac was already walking onto the stage, with Jada following behind him, apparently unable to simply walk away and let him address their conflict publicly without her being there to defend herself. What happened next would become one of the most infamous moments in hip-hop history. Tupac took the microphone as the crowd cheered, expecting another song or maybe some commentary about the music industry. Instead, they got a front-row seat to the most painful personal confrontation many of them had ever witnessed. "New York," Tupac said into the microphone, his voice carrying clearly through the massive arena. "I want y'all to meet someone special. This is Jada Pinkett, and she used to be my friend before she decided that Hollywood was more important than loyalty." The crowd's reaction was immediate confusion. They could sense tension, but they didn't understand what they were witnessing. "See, Jada here is a big movie star now," Tupac continued, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "She's too good for the streets that made her. She's too successful to be associated with people who keep it real." Jada took the microphone that someone handed her, apparently deciding that if this confrontation was going to be public, she wasn't going to let Tupac control the narrative. "That's not true," she said to the crowd. But her voice carried an uncertainty that suggested she wasn't sure how to handle this situation. "What's true is that I'm trying to build a positive career, and some people can't understand that not everyone wants to live in constant conflict." The crowd was beginning to understand that they were witnessing something personal and painful, and their reaction was becoming more engaged and emotional. "Positive career," Tupac repeated, his voice now carrying genuine hurt along with the anger. "Is that what you call turning your back on everyone who helped you get where you are?" "I never turned my back on anyone," Jada shot back, her own frustration now showing. "I made choices about what kind of life I wanted to live. That's not betrayal, that's growth." "Growth?" Tupac's voice was rising now, and the crowd was beginning to get more excited and involved. "You call abandoning your friends growth? You call selling out your principles for money growth?" The word sellout hit the crowd like electricity. In hip-hop culture, being called a sellout was one of the most serious accusations possible, and 30,000 fans understood immediately that they were witnessing something significant. "I'm not a sellout," Jada said, her voice now carrying real anger. I'm someone who refused to let other people's bad decisions limit my opportunities. Bad decisions, Tupac repeated, and his voice was now shaking with fury. So supporting my community is a bad decision? So speaking out against injustice is a bad decision? So refusing to pretend I'm someone I'm not is a bad decision? The crowd was now fully engaged, and their reaction was becoming louder and more emotional with each exchange. That's not what I said, Jada replied. But her voice was getting defensive in a way that suggested she knew she was losing the crowd's sympathy. Then what are you saying? Tupac demanded. Because what I'm hearing is that you think I should have changed who I am to make your Hollywood friends more comfortable. What I'm saying, Jada responded, her voice now carrying its own fury, is that you've become so obsessed with being real that you've forgotten how to be human. You've become so paranoid about sellouts that you can't recognize when people are just trying to protect themselves. The crowd's reaction to this was immediate and negative. Jada's words came across as a rejection not just of Tupac, but of the values that many in the audience held dear. Protect themselves from what? Tupac asked. From being associated with someone who won't compromise his principles for money. Protect themselves from someone who's become dangerous to be around. Jada shot back, apparently beyond caring about the consequences of her words. Protect themselves from someone who sees loyalty as ownership and friendship as control. The accusation that Tupac was dangerous to be around sent a shockwave through the crowd. Many of them identified with Tupac precisely because they felt he represented authenticity in a world full of fake people, and Jada's words felt like an attack on that identity. But Jada wasn't finished. You want to know the real truth? She continued, her voice now carrying the kind of pain that comes from years of suppressed frustration. The real truth is that I've watched you become everything we used to hate. You've become someone who uses guilt and manipulation to control people. You've become someone who can't accept that other people might have different definitions of success. The crowd's reaction was becoming more hostile toward Jada. With each word she spoke, they were hearing her criticize not just Tupac personally, but the values and lifestyle that many of them identified with. You think I'm the one who changed? Tupac asked, his voice now carrying a pain that was audible to everyone in the arena. You think I'm the one who forgot where I came from? Look around you, Jada. Look at these 30,000 people who understand what loyalty means. Look at these people who know the difference between growth and betrayal. The crowd erupted in cheers at this, clearly taking Tupac's side in the confrontation. But what Jada said next would turn the crowd from hostile to dangerous. These people don't know you, she said into the microphone, her voice carrying clearly through the arena. These people see what you want them to see. They don't see the person who's become so paranoid that he destroys every relationship he has. They don't see someone who's more interested in being right than being happy. The crowd's reaction was immediate and explosive. 30,000 people began booing, shouting, and expressing their anger at what they perceived as Jada's disrespect toward Tupac and themselves. But Jada, perhaps carried away by years of suppressed frustration, made the ultimate mistake. You want to talk about selling out? She shouted into the microphone, her voice now carrying over the crowd's anger. What about selling out your own potential? What about selling out your chance at real happiness for this gangster fantasy? The crowd's reaction crossed the line from hostility into genuine fury. People began throwing objects toward the stage, shouting threats, and pressing toward the front with an energy that security immediately recognized as dangerous. Gangster fantasy? Tupac repeated. But now his voice was different. The hurt was gone, replaced by a cold anger that was somehow more frightening than his previous fury. Is that what you think this is? He continued, gesturing toward the crowd and the stage. Is that what you think my life is? A fantasy? The crowd was now in complete uproar, with security guards frantically trying to assess whether the situation was spiraling toward violence. What I think, Jada said, apparently determined to say everything she had been holding back for months, is that you've confused being real with being self-destructive. What I think is that you've decided that anyone who doesn't want to go down with your ship is a traitor. That's when the first bottle was thrown toward the stage. Security immediately moved to protect both Tupac and Jada, but the crowd's energy had reached a tipping point. 30,000 people were on their feet, many of them shouting, some of them trying to get closer to the stage, and the situation was rapidly becoming uncontrollable. "Get her out of here," Tupac said to security, but his words carried clearly through his microphone, making it sound like he was ordering Jada's removal, rather than trying to protect her. "I can protect myself," Jada shouted back, apparently unwilling to let him have the last word even as security guards were trying to escort her safely off the stage. But as she turned to leave, she made one final statement that would haunt both of them forever. "When you're ready to stop playing the victim and start taking responsibility for your choices," she said into the microphone, "call me. Until then, stay out of my life." The crowd's reaction was immediate and violent. People began rushing toward the stage. Security guards were overwhelmed, and what had started as a concert became a riot that would require police intervention to control. Tupac stood alone on the stage as chaos erupted around him, watching his oldest friend disappear into the crowd of security guards, while 30,000 people expressed their fury at her rejection of everything he represented. The Madison Square Garden incident made national news within hours. Video footage of the confrontation spread rapidly, dividing public opinion between those who saw Tupac as a victim of Hollywood betrayal and those who saw him as someone who had manipulated a crowd into attacking a woman who was simply trying to protect her career. Jada's career suffered immediate damage from the incident. Several movie projects were postponed while studios assessed the impact of her association with the controversy. Her management team went into crisis mode, trying to distance her from the incident while protecting her from the threats and harassment that followed. For Tupac, the incident reinforced his belief that success changed people in ways that made real relationships impossible. The pain of Jada's rejection became a recurring theme in his music and interviews, representing his broader frustration with how fame isolated him from genuine human connection. The security footage and audio recordings from that night became some of the most analyzed media in hip-hop history, with fans, critics, and psychologists studying the confrontation for insights into celebrity, loyalty, and the pressures of success. Neither Tupac nor Jada ever spoke publicly about their friendship again. When Tupac was killed 7 months later, Jada's statement was brief and carefully worded, expressing sadness for his death, without acknowledging their personal history. Years later, after becoming Jada Pinkett Smith and achieving even greater success, she would occasionally reference their friendship in interviews, always emphasizing the positive memories while avoiding discussion of how it had ended. The Madison Square Garden confrontation became a cautionary tale about how private pain can become public spectacle when personal relationships intersect with celebrity and fan loyalty. 28 years later, the night when Tupac called Jada Pinkett a sellout remains one of the most emotionally devastating moments in hip-hop history, demonstrating how the pressures of success can destroy even the strongest friendships and turn love into fury that burns everything down. If this story moved you too, hit that like. For more incredible stories, subscribe, and get ready for the next revelation.